first of all, congratulations to both of you. Leigh, you know I've seen this movie 4 times. I saw it 3 times in theaters. It is one of the most incredible horror films I've ever seen because it grounded itself in such a reality that made it so much scarier. Now that we're talking about the home video release, I feel like sequel to questions are probably valid at this point, because at the end of the film, you have the Invisible Woman kind of almost being set up in that aspect. So as we sit here now, can you guys talk at all about where we're going to carry this on? I mean, I'd love to see Elizabeth Moss actually jump into the Invisible Woman movie. That'd be amazing.
Well, Jason and I have been working on something that we can't talk about yet, but you'll hear about it soon. So we've actually been pretty busy. And I haven't had any full-on conversations. There has been the whispers of like, all right, a sequel made, what do you think? But it's never gone into any plot. I mean, I'm sure I wouldn't be able to share any plot specifics anyway, even if there was. But I don't think we've gotten that. No one's gotten that far of like, here's what it should be.
Here's how the conversation goes. Every Monday, for the past Mondays since the movie came out, the past 12 Mondays, I call up Leigh and I say, Leigh, what's the sequel? And he says, I haven't done it yet. And I say, you better start thinking. And he says, call me next month. I've been doing it for 12 weeks. I'm going insane trying to get him to write a sequel. Are you kidding me?
Well, Jason, he's right here. You want to ask him again real quick? I mean, you can go ahead, man.
Leigh, I'm begging you.
Up. Jason, you're breaking up. I can't. you paused weirdly. You're like,
I'm begging the guy.
I feel like when sequels do happen, there's a balance between doing it for a business decision and doing it for a story decision. And Jason, this question will be for you. Where do you find that crossroads when a movie is?
Well, it's the same. It's sort of the same. But if you're just doing it for business, don't do it because it'll be bad. And sequels are not nearly. Sequels used to be a pretty safe bet. Like you really could just kind of put a crappy movie together, put a 2 on it. If the first one worked, the second one would work too. Those days are gone. They are long gone. So if you don't have a good creative reason, that's why I bother Leigh about it, not anybody else. If you don't have a good creative reason, Leigh understands that, for making a sequel, there is 0 reason to make it.
I think what you did in this, I agree with you. And one of the things I think you did really well in this film, Leigh, was you utilized your budget so beautifully. I don't know how the hell you still made this movie for the price that you did, but it looks incredible. And the kitchen scene was the moment that I went, how the hell did he actually do that? So I wanted to ask each of you, do you remember a time when you first started watching movies where you saw a special effect in a movie and you had that exact reaction? Mine was Terminator 2, seeing the T-1000 come out of the ground and become that security officer, that twin officer. For you, each of you, do you remember a moment in cinema that really blew your mind like that and you just wanted to know how it was done?
Oh, I mean, well, I do remember, if we're talking CGI, similar era to Terminator 2, I do remember going to the theater and seeing Jurassic Park like everyone else did and sort of being blown away by it. What's weird is when you watch Jurassic Park now, it almost looks like primitive CGI, like the first steps of what we know that art form is capable of today. So that would be maybe from a CGI concept. But if we go back further than that, I mean, I remember watching films like Clash of the Titans with a stop motion animation and just being so riveted by that and wondering how is that technically possible?
Yeah. Jason, was there a film for you that you saw at a younger age that just like?
Yeah, it looks like kids made it now, but I remember the night, whatever version of the 1980 early 80s Superman, whatever Superman that was, when Superman flew in a new way. I remember that being like, that blew my mind. I saw it at the Galleria Mall in White Plains, and I remember thinking, I can't believe they did that. You look at it now, it looks like kids made it, but then it was amazing.
You know, Leigh, last time you and I spoke, we sat down in LA for The Invisible Man before the theatrical release, and I just love this film. And one of the things that we talked about right before the interview started was this Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. And the only reason I'm bringing this up to both of you now is, Jason, you're one of the best producers in the business. Leigh, you're one of the best directors in the business. I wanted to get your thoughts just on what happened with that from an industry standpoint. Like is that something you think we'll see going forward, where fans can, possibly route to change a film in regards to that. What are your thoughts on that particular movie getting its cut to come out?
Well, I'm sure Jason will have very specific thoughts, from a producerial standpoint. I mean, I'm happy if a filmmaker, any filmmaker, not just Zack Snyder, gets to release their intended version of the movie. To me, it's a movie tragedy if the finished cut of a movie is not what the director intended. Like,
right.
I remember buying a disc a few years ago that it was a Blade Runner, the director's cut. And I remember thinking, you mean all these years I've been watching something that Ridley Scott didn't like? I feel like it should always be that, So I'm happy that in that case that Zack Snyder, who's not someone I know personally, but I'm happy he's getting to release his version of the film. I believe it was a tragic situation that led to him moving off that movie. So I think but fans seem to be getting a bigger voice. So Jason, I don't know what you think. I think fans can drive certain decisions now because of social media. There's this loud voice that can echo. I mean,
I kind of agree and disagree with what Leigh said. I think what I agree with is directors and writers are directors and writers for a reason. Producers and executives are producers and executives for a reason. We're more, if producers were the greatest or executives were the greatest notes givers ever, they shouldn't be producers. They should be writer directors. I think that, I personally, it's not a lot of people disagree with me, but that's my point of view. I put the artist first. It's not that I give them final cut on our movies. I make my opinions heard very loudly, but ultimately, we live the directors. I live or die in what the directors want to do. So I think that's very important as it relates to that. I don't think you should tell an artist, or I guess you're telling a company, but I think you have to be very careful. Like, an artist has got to kind of do their vision without the noise of fans and everything else. Some fans like stuff, some hate stuff. And I think the best art and the best work comes, Leigh is terrific at this, comes from like having a pure vision and going for it. With Leigh, more often than not, people like it. But I don't know, Leigh, you could speak better to it than not. But if you're so worried about what everyone's going to think and what the fans think and what that thinks, I think it ultimately frustrates and hinders the creative process. So yeah, the fans made an uproar to get his cut. I think that's great, but I think you have to be very careful. I think fans are fans for a reason too. You got to be very careful.
I agree. I agree totally, Jason. I think I don't want to take up your whole interview, Kevin, talking about this, but it is a big subject. I think a lot of fans or viewers sometimes don't know what they want until they see it. So you need to create in a vacuum. But I also just want to say, off the back of what Jason said, I am totally on board with directors receiving notes. Blumhouse is one of the smartest companies with notes, from Jason and the people that work there, Cooper. The thoughts that they give you are so smart. I'm totally on board with, I don't believe in the director just putting walls up and saying, no one's input's allowed, it's me. What I was talking about was a tragic situation, is if the movie comes out and the director's not happy. Like if Blade Runner comes out and Ridley Scott's like, I don't like that movie that's in theaters. I believe that if everyone is happy with the movie that's in theaters, that's the best situation.